Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lysha from Lysha Be Creative, and today is the part 2 of our Wild and Free tumbler. Last week I showed you how to create the stainless steel bottom to this tumbler, and now we're going to work on this rhinestone lid. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with this tumbler. So this is the True 22 Cafe lid. I'm going to remove the little rubber pieces from the top and bottom of this and give this a nice sand, a light sand with a 100 grit sanding block. I'm then going to wash that off with a little bit of 91% alcohol just to get this nice and clean so that we can base paint it. So you don't have to at this point do anything else. You could go right in with your rhinestones right here after you've just kind of prepped your top. I though want to base paint my tumbler top just so that it matches the rhinestone mix. So I am going to go around the bottom where kind of the ribs and lines go into the inside of the tumbler when you're screwing on the lid. I'm going to cover those up because I am going to spray paint this. And so I am going to go around that with that blue painter's tape, and then do the same for the inside of where the straw hole is so I don't get any of the overspray into the inside of the lid. So we're going to take this to go spray paint it with flat spray paint, and then we'll come back and go ahead and get started. So now that my tumbler is, my lid I should say, is completely painted, it's dry. You also could use acrylic paint if you wanted to as well. I'm going to go ahead and create my mix. So I have some gold rhinestones that I purchased from the Deco Craft, which I will link down in the description. Everything I use today will be linked down in today's description, as well as where you can find these and any discount codes that I may have as well. So I also have this black rhinestone nail kit that has a bunch of different sizes of black rhinestones. So I just made a mix of the 5mm ones, which are 20, the 20 SS. I have some 16s, and then I have some 2mm stones as well in there, and that's just going to help me with some of those small spaces. I did then put into my gold mixture, which was all SS20s. I put in there some some of the SS6, which is the 2mm stones. I had some like bright yellow gold ones from another nail set mix that I have, and so I decided to throw those in there as well. So I had some smaller stones to put together this tumbler lid. So I also wanted to mention that I like to use Liquid Fusion as my glue of choice. I just have never had an issue with Liquid Fusion, and that's just always been my go-to glue when it comes to rhinestoning. But there are other options out there, and I encourage you definitely to do some trial and error and kind of decide which glue works best for you. So now that I kind of have all of my rhinestone mixtures together, I'm starting with the Liquid Fusion around the bottom lip of the tumbler lid. So there's a little bit of like a ledge or a lip on this lid that gives that kind of that dome effect and juts out a little bit. And so I'm going around that with just the black stones. So I decided to do just the black stones here because I knew I could use all of the SS6 sized stones around here, and I wouldn't be able to fit anything bigger. And so I wanted to remain consistent on that line, and I didn't want it to not be covered in rhinestones because I thought that would also look odd. So I did go around this with just a single line of SS6 sized stones. Wow, say that 7 times fast. I also am using, instead of a precision tip bottle, I'm using just a silicone brush, like eye makeup brush. You literally can purchase these off Amazon. I will have them linked down in the description box. These are just my go-to, super easy, super simple to use, especially with rhinestoning. The precision tip bottles for me for rhinestoning don't work, and I think it's because Liquid Fusion is a bit of a thicker glue, which I love because I know I can get a really strong hold and not have to worry about my stones slipping and sliding all over the place. But the downfall and downside of that is that I can't get the glue to come through that little teeny tiny needle at the top of a precision tip bottle unless I squeeze really hard, and I really didn't want to have cramped fingers by the end of this. So I'm just going to continue to go all the way around that, and then we're going to get started with kind of the bulk of the tumbler lid, which is going to be the dome piece. Okay, so I've got that line of rhinestones all the way around. I'm going to remove the tape from the inside of the lid and I'm going to replace the silicone piece. And the reason why I'm replacing the rubber silicone piece is because I want to make sure when I'm applying my rhinestones that I don't accidentally go too close to that inner circle, which would prevent me from being able to replace that plastic piece back in there. So I put the rubber silicone piece back in the center so that I had a guide for how thick that piece comes out so that I could build around that circle, that center circle, the rhinestones. And so what I'm doing with my mix, I put a little bit of my liquid fusion glue just around that top center piece, and then I literally am just going to go around with random different sizes. With scatter method, which I love versus honeycomb, is it doesn't matter what goes where. You're just literally placing stones whatever size as close as you can get to them. I know that some people don't care for this method because you are going to see really teeny tiny spots where you can see the actual, the actual base of the product that you're using. So like you can see the base. So I know that some people kind of don't care for scatter method for that reason, but you can get stones that are extremely tiny. So if you really are someone who like doesn't like to be able to see any of the base layer whatsoever and that bothers you, you can get even tinier stones. I promise, like these are like, I don't know, like 0.5 millimeter wide. It's crazy how small they are if you really wanted to kind of cover up any of those open spaces. And it's not huge gaps, but obviously if you look close enough you can see teeny tiny gaps, whereas honeycomb, everything is pushed up against each other in the honeycomb method, so you don't really see any spacing or any gaps whatsoever. So there's no real method as far as how I'm picking up stones. I just am going to my gold mix, then I'm going to my black mixture, and I'm just interchanging and just deciding what's going to fit in each spot or each place, like how big of a stone I can get there, and going from there. So that's what I love about the scatter method. It looks absolutely beautiful when you're using mixes as well. And so there are so many places that you can buy different like scattered mixes that come with different size stones, different colored stones, and they're absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Or you can be like me and make your own with what you have, because you have a lot of rhinestones and bling and you definitely don't do enough blinging even though you enjoy it. So I'm just going to continue to go all the way around this tumbler with just kind of the thought of just randomly going in. So if I find that I have too much gold in one section, then I'll go back in with a bunch of black stones and vice versa, trying to scatter throughout this. Since I didn't combine both my gold and my black mixture together, I decided that I would just go back and forth. So since I didn't mix them, I just have to be mindful with how I'm placing my stones to make sure that I have kind of an even distribution of both colors. So I also want to mention that I am by no means a bling master. Like, I do this for fun. Like, rhinestoning is just fun and like really therapeutic and just easy and kind of like mindless, if you will. So I don't have to really put a lot of thought and effort behind it. So I love doing this to just kind of relax. It's something that you can definitely just put on a good show, put on some good music, and just kind of go to town. And so that's what I love about rhinestoning or blinging anything, because there isn't really a whole lot of thought behind it, right? All I need to do is put a little glue on there, get my rhinestones together, etc., right? So definitely just something fun to do. And if you're someone who hasn't yet gotten into rhinestoning or blinging, I started with just doing small keychains, small like acrylic blanks, before I kind of moved on to full tumblers and tumbler lids like this. So there are definitely a lot of smaller projects to do that kind of still give you that kind of relaxing therapy that you need, but you only have to sit and do it for like 45 minutes to an hour and not like a couple hours like I did. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit because otherwise you guys will be watching me bling for like an hour. I think it took me about like an hour, maybe an hour and a half to get the entire lid done. And that's with getting up, getting breaks, going to the bathroom, etc., because I can't sit in one spot for too long. But definitely if you have any questions specifically too throughout anything that I do in today's tutorial, because this will be a rather short one, definitely make sure that you definitely ask any of those questions down in the comments. I want to make sure that I am obviously answering anything that you have, and I know that sometimes my method is not the easiest method. It's just usually the way that I prefer to do things, but if there's any questions that I can answer for you specifically, definitely make sure to let me know down in the comments. Okay, so now I am about an hour in or so, and I am just going to be finishing up kind of this bottom section here. And so I want to talk a little bit about this area here. So because we're using scatter method, although with scatter method, we are just applying stones at random, right? Throughout this entire lid, just putting stones as close to the stones above them as possible, right? Keeping in mind that we are still going to have some sections in some areas that have teeny tiny gaps that no stone could fit in, etc. But something to think about when you're getting down to the bottom of this dome. So you have to be thoughtful as you get towards the bottom, what stones you place where. So you can have the most minimal of gaps in between your stones, because as you get to the bottom, you're going to meet that bottom ledge that we talked about in the beginning. And so you do have to be you kind of have to think ahead. And I suppose you could just go all the way around that bottom section of the dome, just like you did with the just like I did with the top circle, where I placed the stones randomly around that inner circle there. You could do the same with this bottom circle. I decided not to. I decided to keep with my thought of just moving from the center of the dome lid, moving downward, and then just being very specific as I got towards the bottom and looking at the spacing that I had and making a choice as to which stones are going to fit there, so I can minimize the amount of small gaps that would be present in my scatter method dome lid. So I hope that makes sense, and it definitely makes sense if you're someone who's blinged anything before, especially with scatter method, because you're familiar with the small gaps that may happen. And so when you're doing something like this, right, that it's not straight, right, so it's a different kind of like warped size, right? It's not like a straight cup where you can kind of, gauge kind of what stones are going to fit there a little bit better. This, you get to the edge and like that's it. Like that's the only amount of space that you have, and you have to work with what you have, and just try and make it work for you. So again, as I mentioned, I'm absolutely not a pro whatsoever, so certainly take any advice that I give you in this tutorial and take it as it is. I definitely have just come to learn a lot of things through my process of blinging, and although I don't do it very often, it's not something I do every week in my craft space, it is something that I have done enough, and every time I bling something, I learn something new. So it definitely is one of those crafts and projects that, although it is therapeutic, you definitely do learn a lot about blinging in general and rhinestoning as you do different projects, use different products, right? So you just learn a lot of different things based on what you're using. I learned a lot doing a dome lid versus working on a tumbler versus working on a keychain or an acrylic blank. So that is just kind of the beauty in rhinestoning. It's very similar to epoxy tumblers as well, because every design that I do, I learn something new, whether it's a new trick and hack that just makes things easier for me and the way that my brain works, or learning a new design and learning how to approach it. So it's just the beauty in crafting, I think, which is probably why I love it so much, because there's never a dull moment. I always learn something. So I'm going to finish up the rest of this lid, and then I'm going to get into showing you exactly how we are going to finish off this tumbler lid so it's ready to go off to its new customer. Okay, so per my glue, I usually let my rhinestones sit and cure for a few days. I think I waited a full week, but definitely make sure to pay attention to the back of the bottle to see how long you should wait before you wash your rhinestone items. So I have just a bucket of lukewarm water, and I have a little bit of Dawn dish soap in there, and I'm going to use this bristle brush that I got from the Dollar Tree, and this is what I use to clean off all my stones. It's going to clean off any of that excess glue. It's also going to remove any of the wax from my stone picker upper to make sure that we are letting these stones sparkle and shine as they were meant to. So I'm just going to rinse that off, and then I will dry that with paper towels. I'll let the rest of it air dry, and then it is ready to go off to its brand new owner. So let's go ahead and take a look at this top up close and personal. Don't forget that if you loved today's tutorial, to give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put videos out on my channel every Tuesday and Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern, so I'll see you guys again next week. Bye!